I've been asked throughout my musical career, so what are your influences? What bands influenced you? What singers, whatever it is, what has influenced you musically? So we're going to dive into that today on Raw and Unfiltered. Now, I did share the songwriting process. Hopefully, you caught that episode. If not, check it out. It's here on YouTube. By the way, before we dive into this, please hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. I want to be able to take you on this journey of the Laire career. Of course, I got the new album ER that I'm working on, which is coming across great. I'll be sharing more about that. That album is coming out next year. But yeah, hit that subscribe button. Love to have you be with me as I take you on this journey. I was thinking, going back to growing up as a kid, what were some of the influences that musically that I was listening to? This is before I even learned how to play guitar, but I have to say that the Beatles were a huge influence. You know, this is a band, obviously, and I know there's some people who are like, I never really got into the Beatles. So be it, right? Music is an opinion. But I have to say that the Beatles were very influential, and even to this day, they still are very influential. I mean, Paul McCartney in his 80s, he's touring. Ringo is in his 80s, he's still touring, and they're selling out shows. So their music is still relevant. But, you know, what was great about the Beatles is that they were a great pop band, and later on in their career, they really got into some more experimental music and just trying things and breaking the rules. And I really think that's a great thing. For example, when this is probably the holy grail of Beatles albums, if you can find one, and they're out there. This is referred to as the Beatles Butcher album. The Butcher album was an album cover that the Beatles did for Yesterday and Today that they were kind of getting tired of having to do separate album covers for the American releases versus the releases that they were doing in Britain. But so they did this session and they had this album cover and they're like, just do it. So the album gets made, not released yet. The album ends up on the desk of the president of Capitol Records in 1966. And he's like, hell no, we are not releasing this album. So he issued a recall, and they all, wherever the album was sent out, they all were recalled. He said, these albums need to be destroyed. And if you don't destroy them, it's your job. Well, when albums were returned back to the record plant, a couple of the record plants thought, why should we waste all this material? Let's just get the new album cover, which is referred to as the trunk cover. You can look that up. And we'll just slap it on top and no one will ever know. Well, word got out that there was this mystery Beatles album, and there was this secret album cover under the album cover. So people started to peel off the album cover to see this album cover. Some discovered it, some didn't, and a lot of album covers got destroyed. But there are many of these that have survived, but they are extremely collectible. This particular poster that you're seeing is an original in-store poster that was sent to, they send these to the record stores to promote the new album that was coming out. This one, fortunately, did not get destroyed, so glad to have been able to salvage this poster, but very cool. Anyway, point is, Beatles were very influential, especially in their later career. They experimented. They did things that, again, broke the rules, but by doing that, you are moving music forward, and I like that, and that's kind of my approach to my songwriting. Now, of course, when I got into Pink Floyd, that wasn't until I was actually writing music, and I was familiar with Pink Floyd. I do share this story I'm going to share with you. I get into more detail on the songwriting episode, so again, check that one out here. But when I started to write music seriously, my style was moody and in the same kind of vein as Pink Floyd. And as a stupid, naive kid, I was like, oh man, these guys write like I do, even though they were doing it for many years before I was even doing it. But I have to say that just my writing style is moody. And when I really listened to what Pink Floyd was doing, I was just blown away. And it's like, yeah, this is exactly my style, right? Of my style of writing. And I have to say that David Gilmour is a huge influence, and glad I've had the opportunity to see him perform live. Never saw Pink Floyd, but at least I got to see Gilmour, and I did see Roger Waters solo as well when he did the tour for The Wall. So it was cool to actually see at least a couple of the guys from Pink Floyd perform. But again, very influential, and I know that you can hear it in my music, especially when it comes to the the cinematic aspect of what I do musically. So yeah, again, Pink Floyd, huge influence. Now, when I was growing up as a kid, and again, I mentioned this in the songwriting episode about my buddy Gary Newman. Gary Newman was a huge influence for me, and this is before the song Cars came out. Everybody knows Cars. That was his big breakout hit, Here in My Car, right? But I have to say that the album that came out before The Pleasure Principle, which had the song Cars on it, was Replicas. And what was so great about this particular album, and I'm glad I had the opportunity to talk to Gary about this album and about his career. He was a punk guy. He was in the whole punk thing back in the late 70s, and the record company wanted him to make another punk album. Well, he discovered I guess it was a Mini Moog that was in the studio, and he started messing around with it. And he was like, wow, this is great. So he decided to not just go hardcore punk guitar, and he took his songs and rearranged them for synth. Now, he did have a couple of guitar songs on this album, but songs like Replicas, Down in the Park, Our Friends Electric, which became a huge hit in Britain, really was a breakout. Now, the record company was like, oh, no, don't do it, Gary. But he went ahead and did it anyway. He broke the rules, and glad that he did, because that actually ushered the whole synthesizer era for the new wave, 80s new wave. It was Gary Newman who did that. And, like I said, I was really happy to have had the opportunity to talk to Gary about Replicas and his career, and his music, and just him doing what he did on Replicas got me into synthesizers. And I have to say that that was a huge influence. And even in my music, I still, it's that moody and industrial sound, which if you listen to Newman today, go see him. He's still performing and playing around the country. Check him out, man. The band is great. His music is cool. It's just a really great show, and his album work is really cool. It's again, very industrial. So don't think of Gary Newman as just Here in My Car, all right? Much more than that, but again, a huge influence. Now, this band, Rush, was another big influence for me. These guys are just incredible musicians. Now, I remember when Moving Pictures came out. Hated this because I just couldn't stand listening to Geddy Lee sing. I was just one of those people, and there's a lot who are like, they can't get over his vocals because, well, Anyway, so people were like, oh, they're all into Moving Pictures. They're going to go see Rush and all that. And I was like, hell no. But after, I guess probably a couple of years after that album came out, I started to really listen to Rush, and I really started to appreciate the musicianship of the band. So my first Rush album wasn't Moving Pictures, it wasn't Permanent Waves, it wasn't anything that came out afterwards. It was Hemispheres. Hemispheres was an incredible album, and that's what really blew me away and got me into Rush hardcore. Oh man, this band is great, and I am a big fan, and I am going to go see them with their new drummer. One of my regrets is not seeing Rush at the Forum when they played their very last show. I had an opportunity to go and I didn't go, so I blew that. So I'm going to go see them when they play in 2026. We'll see how it is. Why not? Another influence growing up, of course, was Queen. Now, when I played in the bands that I was playing in back in the day, they're hardcore Queen fans. The lead singer, jumped around the stage, had the half mic stand, did all the Freddie Mercury moves. They were hardcore into Queen. Now, I picked Queen 2 to show you here because I feel, for me, their first two albums were the most influential. They were the most influential for me. And if you listen to Queen 2, I know they use this picture for Bohemian Rhapsody and all that, but you listen to Queen 2, very progressive. This is probably their most progressive album. And the work on this album is just off the charts. It is so great. Now remember, this album was released, I think, in 1974. Right? No auto-tune, no digital recording like Pro Tools or any of those other programs that you can do linear or non-linear recording. They did it because they were talented, right? You listen to the Queen harmonies, right? There's no auto-tune in that. Of course, now with the re-release of Queen 1 and Queen 2, I don't know what the hell Brian May and Roger Taylor are thinking. Don't auto-tune Freddie, right? If he's a little pitchy, so what? That gives his singing character. There are so many songs that have mistakes in them. Listen to Beatles songs and older, artists where you didn't have the opportunity to go back and digitally fix everything so it's like so perfect. Because when things are too perfect, you're taking the life out of that song, right? You don't want to do that. Don't take the life out of the song. All right. Anyway. Queen was an influence for me, and again, just vocal arrangements and things of that nature. I'm not a big fan of the whole, Radio Gaga era, but the older stuff, absolutely, absolutely, great stuff and big, huge influence. Now, when I was in high school, I was exposed to jazz fusion, and one of my sister's friends had given me a cassette tape. And on one side was Al Di Meola, guitar player, and on the other side was Jean-Luc Ponty. Jean-Luc Ponty Live was the album that was on this cassette tape. And I was blown away because I had never heard anything like this before. This was jazz fusion. I was in 10th grade. I didn't even know that Jean-Luc Ponty was a violinist. And when I first heard this album, I thought it was synthesizer because what he does is that he runs the violin through, phase shifters and delays and all those things. So it sounded like a keyboard to me. I had no idea that it was a violin. And that really blew me away as well. Listen to this album, man. I'm telling you, expose yourself to these things because it was incredibly influential. And some of the riffs that he used in his music, I stole. And I even told him. I told him when I had the opportunity to meet him. I said, you know what? I love your music, and I even stole some of your riffs and played them on guitar because they were just so cool. And it was great to be able to have this opportunity, not only to meet and talk with Jean-Luc Ponty, but to see him play. And that was really great. But his style of music was influential. Not that I'm a jazz fusion player and you don't hear that in my music, but maybe you do, right? There are some subtle influences that are there. And, again, I also had a chance to see him again when he was doing the Anderson Ponty Band, and that's John Anderson from Yes. Which was great to meet John Anderson as well, but just incredible music that was very, very influential to me. Now, I do have to say that music scores, movie soundtracks, that's where I get the whole cinematic thing with my music. So, for example, Danny Elfman, Edward Scissorhands is a great album, and there are very few songs or albums that when you hear that first note, you get locked in immediately. Edward Scissorhands was one of those soundtracks that did that. Of course, you have great composers like John Williams, right? Star Wars, Schindler's List, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Jaws, the list just goes on. A great composer who was very influential, and for me as a musician, because again, that cinematic aspect. For example, on the Resurrection of Black album, I have an instrumental that just opens up the whole album. Right, it creates the mood that sets the tone and the vibe for the album. And on ER, the album I'm recording right now, I have an instrumental that is setting the tone and the vibe for the entire album. And that's where the whole cinematic aspect of my songwriting comes in because of movie soundtracks, very influenced by movie soundtracks. And another thing that I want to share with you is you should listen to classical music. Listen to Mozart, right? Mozart, there's a reason why he is considered one of the greatest composers ever. Bach, Chopin, Stravinsky, Stravinsky's Rite of Spring. There's all this dissonant things that are going on, and when he wrote that music and had it performed back in 1912 or 1913, or whenever it was, beginning of the 20th century, people went nuts over that. They're like, what the hell is this? But it was innovative, and it was creative, and it was experimental, and he was breaking the rules. But listen to classical music because you will, again, hear things that are going to blow you away. And you will also hear things about musicians who have borrowed from classical music. You hear it all the time. You hear it all the time. Now, I do want to hit some honorable mentions. There's a band from the Netherlands that I just totally dig and still do called The Gathering. I love Anneke van Giersbergen is such an incredible singer. The first time I heard her sing was this album called If Then Else. There's a song that was called Analog Park. That was the first time I really heard her voice, and I was just hooked. Love this band. Check them out. They are super, super great. Again, I am thrilled that I had the opportunity to see Anneke perform, and also got a chance to meet her as well. That's Anneke there on the left, and that's Charlotte Wessels. She was singing with the Delane at the time, and though she's doing her own solo stuff now, but another great singer. But it was just a thrill to be able to meet Anneke in person and tell her how much that her singing and music has inspired me as well. And then as I say, other honorable mentions, you got Linkin Park, Mike Shinoda. I had a chance to hang out and talk with him for a while. Cool dude. And then other bands like Dream Theater, I appreciate what they can do musically. And then, again, other bands like Metallica, Supertramp. There are so many other bands that are out there that are just incredible. And they may have influenced me directly musically, indirectly musically. But the thing about music is that it creates an emotion. That's what music does, and that's why it really is the universal language. So these bands are the ones that have influenced me and my music and allow me to create emotional music that I hope you get into as well. And that's why I'm so super excited and thrilled to do ER, because this album is just an emotionally kick-ass album. ER stands for emotional release, all right? That is what the album is all about, emotional release. And the songs that are on this album are going to take you on an emotional journey. So I'll be talking again more about ER and the songs that are on them and the process that's going on. Some of the bass work has been done now with Matt Bissonette on bass, and it's just, oh my God, it's freaking awesome. So anyway, those are my influences. Glad to share that with you. And I appreciate being able to take you again on the Laine's Lair journey. Hit that subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss another episode of Raw and Unfiltered. Thank you so much for tuning in. And of course, my last assignment to you always is when you're out and about in the world, smile at a stranger, all right? Say hello to them. Give them a compliment, because that small gesture of kindness can make all the difference in the world, and you can put a smile on somebody's face, all right? So be a good human, right? Be a life changer. Spread some positivity. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll be talking to you next week on another edition of Raw and Unfiltered.